So what will it take? When it comes down to it, what will it take for Pat Narduzzi to make a change at quarterback? He didn't do it last year. Is there something we can read into that? He did it in 2017. Is there something we can read into that? He didn't do it in 2015. You might be saying, 2015? What? Well, there might be something to read in that too. So let's break down the quarterback situation, what it may take for a quarterback change, and whether or not Pat Narduzzi will make a change at quarterback at some point this season on today's Morning Pitt here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. All right, it's Tuesday on the Morning Pitt, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. I'm Chris Peak from Panther-Lair.com. You know the website below, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com, the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet, football, basketball, and recruiting. You find it all at Panther-Lair.com and message boards to interact with hundreds and thousands of other Pitt fans. All day, every day, Pitt fans are talking about Pitt sports on Panther-Lair.com, and they have been talking a lot over the last 3 days, as you can imagine. The message boards are always very active after a loss. They're always very active during all year round. But certainly in the fall when there are games going on, and even more so in the fall after a loss, the message boards always have a lot to say. And that's been the case in the early going this week, and I suspect it's going to continue heading into the backyard brawl this Saturday, which at some point we'll start talking about. At some point we'll start talking about the backyard brawl. That point is not today, although we will touch on it. It'll get referenced here as a future occurrence and a scenario to play out. But we'll break down that game this week, just not today. Today we have other things to talk about on the Morning Pit. Of course, we do this show every day of the week, Monday through Friday on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. A little bit of Pitt sports talk to get you started. I didn't listen to every minute of sports talk radio yesterday, but the little bit that I heard of Pitt, it mostly revolved around Phil Jurkovec's comments about grown-ass men and the stands at Acrisure Stadium booing the team. Maybe there was probably more conversation about the team and its performance against Cincinnati. I didn't hear much of it, but that's why we do this. So you get a little bit of Pitt talk every morning just to get your day started with some Pitt thoughts. Yesterday we talked about a lot of the plays that sort of went wrong for Pitt, a lot of the mistakes and crucial, sort of missteps that they made outside of just the passing game and offense, where there were obviously big issues. We talked about some other issues that sort of plagued the team on Saturday and cost them that game. But now we're moving forward to the future and what will happen in the future and what the rest of this season is going to look like. And we're going to start with a very basic question because we're talking about the quarterback. We're talking about Phil Jurkovec, fresh off of his, what did he finish at? 10 of 32 for 179 yards and 3 touchdowns. No interceptions. Very efficient, Phil is. Not in terms of completion percentage, but in terms of protecting the ball. He's only got a fumble, right? No interceptions, though. So that's good. 10 of 32, though. 4 completions in the first half, though. These are very bad, and some of the passes were very bad. And Phil Jurkovec was far from the only issue in that game, but boy, howdy, was he a big issue. So we come to the question, will Pat Narduzzi change quarterbacks this week, this season, at any point? Will he make a quarterback change? My answer is probably not. And that's it. We've answered it. End of the episode. We got nothing more to do, right? Okay. Obviously, we're going to talk a little bit more about it because you can dig into that conversation quite a bit more, and I think there's a lot of angles to consider. I think Pitt fans' worst fear is that Pat Narduzzi is loyal to a fault, that Pat Narduzzi will start a quarterback, pick a quarterback, recruit a quarterback out of the transfer portal, and then proceed to stick with that guy through thick and thin, no matter how much evidence there is to the contrary about that guy being the right guy. And I get that. I watched the Louisville game last year. I watched the Georgia Tech game last year. I watched the Carolina game last year. I watched Kedon Slovis last year. Kedon Slovis, who threw for 348 yards and 4 touchdowns for BYU against whoever it was, Southern Utah on Saturday. But that's neither here nor there. I understand where you're coming from. If you say Narduzzi won't change the quarterback, he's loyal to a fault, he refuses to change a quarterback, he promised the job and now he won't walk back on it. I don't know how clearly I can say this. Let's say it this way. I believe Pat Narduzzi will do what he can to give the team its best chance to win in his view. That means playing the players who give them the best chance to win, in his view, in the view of the coaching staff. That means making changes when those changes need to be made if they give the team the best chance to win, in his view and the view of the coaching staff. And that applies to the quarterback position. Now, you might say, Chris, Kedon Slovis threw 2 interceptions at the goal line at Louisville last year. How in God's name was he still the best option at that point? I think he was. And anybody I've talked to, like people around Pitt, people around the program who watch the program, who are close to the program, either on staff or just kind of around on the periphery, but have, around enough and close enough to have a real sense of things, pretty much 100% say, yeah, Slovis was bad. Slovis struggled. He had some real struggles throughout the year last year, and some on him, and some were his fault, and some were not. But he was still the best option. Even in those dark days of October, he was still the best option. And that may seem crazy, I know, because I know what Nick Patty did in the Sun Bowl, and I know, what he did when he had his opportunities. But, I mean, you look at the stat line from the Sun Bowl, and you look at how Nick Patty played throughout that game, and love Nick Patty. He's a great kid, great teammate, great program guy, great representative of the program, and made some incredible plays in the final 2 minutes, to win that game, but really kind of wasn't very good the rest of the game. I think Slovis was still the best option. And I think the coaches believe that Slovis was still the best option, and it wasn't about loyalty, it wasn't about promising the job, it wasn't about whatever out of the transfer portal. Because if you're a coach and you're recruiting out of the transfer portal, you recruit a guy, you bring a quarterback in, if you promise him the job, right? Let's say they promised Kedon Slovis the job, or they promised Phil Jurkovec the job, period, point blank, no questions asked, never to be returned, and he's going to start 13 games as long as he can walk on the field, regardless of performance. I mean, you're shooting yourself in the foot. You know what I mean? You're taking a tremendous risk with a job that's paying you millions of dollars. I think they stuck with the guy they believed was best. And so when it comes to this season, I think they'll stick with the guy they believe is best. And as long as that continues to be Phil Jurkovec, then he's going to be the guy. I've had a policy for a long time, and I wouldn't say a policy, it's sort of a philosophy, that I tend to shy away from questioning personnel decisions. And I tend to shy away from questioning personnel decisions because, not because you should just defer to the coaches on everything, they're always right about everything, but I look at it like this, all right? And I've said this before. If you've watched these videos before, if you've listened to the podcast before over the last who knows how many years, 10 years, or however long we've been doing a podcast, if you've read the message boards at Panther-Lair.com, if you've read stuff I've written on Panther-Lair.com, I've said this a bunch of times, that I struggle with questioning personnel decisions because the coaches are with the players for every practice in the spring, every practice in training camp, every film session, every meeting, every review, every conversation, hours upon hours upon hours of time. And we all walk into the stadium, and I'm including myself in this. We walk into the stadium and we watch the game for now it's 3 hours. It used to be 4 hours last year. And we watch for 3 hours and 4 hours and say, my God, there has to be somebody better than this. Why don't you just try this other guy just to see what he can do? You might as well just find out. And that's all well and good for me to say that. And it's all well and good for you to say that. But I think if you put yourself in the coach's position and you've got hours and hours of evidence and film that you can review of this guy, and conversations you've had with him, meetings you've had with him, and practices where you've watched him, I think by that point, by the time you get to the season, you have a pretty clear idea of who can help you the most. And that's not to say that coaches are infallible. And that's not to say that coaches never make wrong decisions on this regard. There have been times where they will end up just trying a guy and it turns out to be right. But those are far fewer than fans would seem to believe. For as much as we all advocate, fans and media, for as much as we advocate, just try this guy. God, you might as well find out what he can do. It can't be any worse than this. For as many times as we say that, coaches do it a very small amount of times, and it actually works an even smaller number of times. For all the time that we sat back and said, why isn't Paris Ford getting on the field? Once Paris Ford played, We saw some of the reasons. We saw the big, exciting highlight plays, but gave up a bunch of touchdowns too. The backup is not always better, and just trying a guy for the sake of trying him in the course of a game is something that most coaches, almost all coaches, are going to shy away from. It's just the reality. It's the nature of the situation. It's the nature of the profession. Millions of dollars they're being paid, to do these jobs. I look at it like this. If you were a coach and you were being paid millions of dollars to win games, and you've got piles of evidence that this player is a better option than this player, you're not going to say, all right, let's just try this guy. I'm getting paid $3 million a year. I have a $3 million a year job. I have all these people whose livelihood depends on me making the right decisions and being successful. I'm just going to try this guy. I've got a stack of evidence this tall that says this guy's the best option, and I've got no evidence that says this guy's the best option, but I think I'll give it a go with him. Let's see what he can do. Yeah, why not? Coaches aren't wired that way. They aren't going to make those decisions, not with any kind of consistency or regularity. They're going to go with the guy they believe gives them the best chance based on that mountain of evidence they've got from spring ball, training camp, meetings, film sessions, and all those things. This is what they do. And we've seen it time and time again. And it's not about loyalty, and it's not about, just promising the job to somebody and you're never going to go back on it, or, anything like that. It's about playing the guy you feel like is best. Now we bring it into the present. And is the guy who went 10 of 32 best? That's a bit of a tougher sell. And if he is the best option on the roster, what does that say about the other guys? Now, I'm not going to go down that road too far just yet. I think Christian Vera has a chance to be really good. I like Nate Yarnell from what we've seen of him. I also think Phil Jurkovec is better than he played on Saturday. I really do. I've talked about accuracy. I've mentioned Jurkovec's accuracy and accuracy issues dating back to the spring. I mean, I've talked about this is the concern with him. This is what, aside from health, in terms of actually playing on the field, this is the big concern with Jurkovec is accuracy, especially deep, but just sort of in general. It's not his strong suit, and it never has been his strong suit. But he's still better than he showed on Saturday. I think he's better than 10 of 32. I think he's better than 4 of 13. I mean, this game could not have started worse for Phil Jurkovec. His 14 dropbacks in the first half. Incomplete pass, incomplete pass, incomplete pass, sack, incomplete pass. A prayer of an arm punt to Konate Mumfield for 30 yards, plus an extra 15 for a roughing penalty. This is a 45-yard play. Incomplete pass. Nice throw to Dejon Reynolds for 17 yards. Great throw to Konate Mumfield for a 5-yard touchdown. Incomplete pass. Incomplete pass. 4-yard pass to Gavin Bartholomew on a 3rd and 6. Incomplete pass. Incomplete pass. 14 dropbacks, 13 pass attempts, 4 completions, 56 yards, and a touchdown. And, 13 passes, maybe 2 of them were good throws. Now, I shouldn't say that because there were a couple passes that were pretty good that weren't caught. It wasn't like every one of Jurkovec's 32 passes was bad, and it wasn't even like every one of Jurkovec's 22 incomplete passes was bad. There were catchable balls out there, as we talked about at length on Saturday in the postgame show. I think he's better than that. And I think if the staff believes he's better than that, and more importantly, the staff believes he's better than the guys behind him, he's going to keep playing even if he has another first half like he had. If they go down to Morgantown on Saturday and he only completes 4 passes in the first half, he's 4 of 14 or 5 of 16 or something like that, or 3 of 13, I would bet that Jurkovec comes out and starts the second half. And there's actually a little bit behind that. Because in 2015, when Nate Peterman was the quarterback, after he took over the job from Chad Wojcik, an instance where the starting quarterback at the beginning of the season was replaced, because that can happen. The coaches will go with the guy who gives them the best chance to win, and they believe Jurkovec gave them the best chance to win, and so they replaced Wojcik with Peterman. They believed Peterman gave them the best chance to win, so they replaced Chad Wojcik with Nate Peterman, getting my names mixed up. But late in the season, in the second half of the season, Pitt had 2 games that are particularly notable here and relevant here. And they were games against Notre Dame and Miami. In the first half against Notre Dame that year, Nate Peterman went 3 of 18 for 44 yards. Now, that's pretty bad, right? 3 of 18 for 44 yards. Second half, came out 9 of 13, 179, a touchdown and an interception. They lost that game. They were playing from behind, the entire second half, but Peterman went 9 of 13 for 179 yards and a touchdown and a pick. After going 3 of 18 for 44 yards. They didn't change quarterbacks. They stuck with Peterman, and he played better in the second half. Season finale, regular season finale, they host Miami at Heinz Field. First half, Peterman goes 5 of 12 for 36 yards and an interception. He threw an interception on Pitt's first play of the game, Pitt's first offensive snap of the game. Artie Burns picked him off. 5 of 12 for 36 yards. Second half, he was a little bit better, 8 of 15 for 106 and a touchdown. Still not great, but at least a little bit better. Neither time did Pat Narduzzi replace Nate Peterman, and that was like late season. That wasn't even like the first game of the season or second game of the season where you say, okay, we're going to give him a few weeks to try and figure these things out. He was 3 of 18 against Notre Dame in the first half, but he wasn't replaced. And the reason he wasn't replaced is because the coaching staff believed he gave them the best chance to win. You look at the guys behind him, it was Chad Wojtek, it was a true freshman, Ben DiNucci, and it was Adam Burtke. Do you remember Adam Burtke, kid from Ohio, tall, lanky kid, who ended up going to, I think he was a Paul Chryst quarterback recruit, and he ended up transferring to Findlay, Ohio. Findlay University. I think maybe a D3 school. Wojtek had already been replaced. They had already decided that Peterman was a better option than Wojtek, and they decided that on the field, with both quarterbacks playing at the beginning of the season before they ultimately went with Peterman. DiNucci was a true freshman. So those were the 3 options behind Peterman. They weren't better options. They didn't give the team a better chance to win. And so they stuck with Peterman. And ultimately that paid off, 2016. He had some really good games for Pitt. And there's obviously stuff with coordinators and things like that. But my point is this. Despite a truly abysmal performance, the coaching staff stuck with the guy they believed gave them the best chance to win. And at this point, that guy is Phil Jurkovec. Jurkovec's the quarterback they believe gives them the best chance. And so I believe they're going to stick with him. Now, I don't think Jurkovec is as bad as he showed on Saturday. As a matter, he threw 3 touchdown passes. The first time he's thrown 3 touchdown passes since he did it against Scott Satterfield last year when Satterfield was at Louisville and Jurkovec was at Boston College. He's been better in his career. The accuracy is an issue. But on the whole, he's been better than in his career than he was on Saturday. And I think when they get down to West Virginia this Saturday, I don't think West Virginia's pass rush is going to be quite as stout as Cincinnati's was. I think Luke Fickell did a good job recruiting at Cincinnati, and obviously those defensive linemen could play at Pitt. I don't know if they're entirely Charlie Partridge's style of defensive tackles, but they could play there, and they tried to recruit. I don't know if they recruited Corleone. I know they recruited Juwan Briggs, and he would look pretty good playing in Pitt's, playing 3 technique at Pitt right now, or just anywhere at defensive tackle for Pitt. I don't think West Virginia's pass rush is going to be quite as strong as Cincinnati's. And so Jurkovec should have a little bit more time, should have a little bit more, passing success. I think he also, another thing that'll probably help is they should be able to establish the running game a little bit better than they did against Cincinnati. And it still doesn't make a lot of sense of why they didn't put more effort into the running game, why they didn't commit more to the running game. We talked about it after the game. 6 carries each for Rodney Hammond, Daniel Carter, and Sebo Flemister. 18 carries for the running backs, and this is supposed to be a run-heavy offense. And I know they were down, 13 points at halftime, but and ultimately 27-7. But throughout the first half, the first half stats right here. And Sebo Flemister had 5 carries, Daniel Carter had 4, and Rodney Hammond had 6. So already, you only have 15 carries for those 3 backs in the first half, which doesn't seem like enough to me. And then you get into the second half, you only get 3 more carries for those backs throughout the entirety of the second half. Even if you're down by 20 points, You don't need to be throwing every play. And you really didn't need to be throwing every play in the first half either. You could have done more to establish the run, and they really didn't. They're going to have to be more committed to the run. I think a big, if you watched the Morning Pitt from the Thursday before the Wofford game, one of the first questions I asked Pat Bostic, he was our guest, and I said, Pat, or it was actually the Friday before the Wofford game, it was the day before. I said, where is Phil Jurkovec at his best? When Phil is being the best Phil, what is he doing? And he said it was play action. He's running play action. He's dropping back and taking shots and kind of hitting that mid-range to deep passes. Well, you don't really have many options to run play action if your run game isn't going, and not just your run game is ineffective, but your run game, you're showing no commitment to your run game. There's not much to be respected in that regard, and so you're going to have a hard time connecting on play action passes and making those work. I think this week, if they can get the run game going a little bit better, if they can pass protect a little bit better, I think you'll see an improved Phil Jurkovec, and I think the Pitt coaches are counting on it. I think the Pitt coaches believe they can see and they will see an improved Phil Jurkovec. Now, what that looks like, I don't know, but I think it looks better than 4 of 13 and 10 of 32. I also think, there's some other elements at play here as well. We talked about, Bub Means got 11 targets in that game, and which was by far the most out of any of the receivers. I'm just bringing up the target numbers here. 11 for Means, 6 for Dejon Reynolds, 5 for Gavin Bartholomew, 4 for Konate Mumfield. If I'm Frank Signetti, and I'm Phil Jurkovec, I'm looking for Konate Mumfield first. I'm looking for Gavin Bartholomew and Dejon Reynolds about an equal amount of times, and I'm looking for Bub Means in certain situations. Bub Means is not going to be your go-to guy, and I'm not sure if he ever was going to be your go-to guy, but they threw the ball to him like he was the go-to guy, and I just don't think that's his role. I don't think that's what he's going to be able to do. But Mumfield could be. Bartholomew can be. Reynolds can be. And I'm also going to go to the running backs underneath. They had 2 targets for Rodney Hammond and that's it. In that game, after we saw the running backs catch a bunch of passes in the opener against Wofford. Those guys can make plays there as well. So I think there are a lot of ways this passing game can improve. I think there are a lot of ways Jurkovec can play better. They just have to actually go out and do it. But is there going to be a quarterback change? Even if there's another 4 of 13 start in the first half? My guess is no. I'm sorry. if that's disappointing for you, but that's kind of how I see it. That might have to be my prediction in the 3-2-1 column this week, is that they won't be changing quarterbacks, but we'll see. Pat Narduzzi has certainly surprised me in the past, but I think there are a lot of factors that they can lean into to get a better performance out of Phil Jurkovec. All right. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, so you don't miss any of our exclusive Pitt video content right here. Press conferences, interviews, practice highlights, all that stuff. And, of course, the Morning Pitt, the live streams, the post-game show. We got a ton of stuff right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. You don't want to miss any of it, so like this video and subscribe, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, and then head over to the website, Panther-Lair.com. Pittsburgh.rivals.com, the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet, football, basketball, and recruiting. Find it all, Panther-Lair.com. All right, thanks so much for tuning in today. We'll be back tomorrow with more Pitt sports talk. Let's move up toward the brawl. Can't wait. Should be a good time. All right, have a good Tuesday, and we will talk to you tomorrow on the Morning Pitt right here, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.